Um, Hi to all. Uh, Welcome to Oracle ASAP Design Studio demo by Cellcom Solutions. So today we'll be discussing about the ASAP Design Studio. These are the topics which we'll cover today. So first, we'll start with the introduction of ASAP. As we before seeing Oracle ASAP Design Studio, we'll try to understand what is ASAP and what it does. Then we'll see the types of cartridge creation options, then Design Studio for ASAP, then cartridge creation workflow. So this workflow is nothing but sequence of steps involved in building the cartridge. So and finally we conclude with the topic of importing existing SAP files into Design Studio. Yeah, these are the topics we should cover. So let's start. Now let's start with the introduction of ASAP. So ASAP stands for Automated Service Activation Program. So and it is one of the components in our Oracle communication suite. So, this Oracle Communication ASAP equips telecommunication service providers with a single platform for automated service activation. So the ASAP can equips like different telecommunication providers with a single platform for an automated service activation. So, this is about ASAP, the brief introduction of ASAP. So now, first of all, we'll see about what it does. So, ASAP receives a service request from any source and it transmits the required service activation information to a destination network element. So if I say in a simple terms, it is an application responsible for converting high-level network provisioning request into network device specific commands. So next we will see about types of cartridge creation options. So first of all, how many ways we have to create the cartridge? So we have three options. We have three ways to create the cartridge. Using XML, we can create the cartridge. Using store processor, we can create the cartridge. Finally, Design Studio. So even though this activation cartridges can be built outside the Design Studio, this is not recommended approach. So Oracle is not recommended to create these cartridges outside Design Studio. It is recommended to create in a Design Studio. So why Design Studio for example? Because it provides the functionalities like creating, deploying, and managing cartridges. So extend the cartridge as per the customer specific service configuration. You can deploy complex multi-domain services into the production, test, and development environment. You can model the network element instances. You can generate the Java stubs in the Design Studio. You can enforce naming conventions and consistency. So we can deploy or undeploy. So you can have a Design Studio has a GA. So these all functionalities makes or simplifies the creation and deployment of services across the multiple domains. So that's why using the Design Studio, it speeds up our development process and optimizes the cartridge design and implementation. So our next topic is cartridge creation workflow. So workflow is nothing but sequence of steps to build the cartridge. Yeah. So here I have noted all the steps. First we will see all the steps, then we will create the cartridges and we will see all the steps in the Design Studio. First we will try to understand. So yeah, this is the workflow. So before starting your cartridge development, first what we have to do is first we have to understand the functionality and attributes for each engine. that your cartridge must manage before you start the development in a sub cartridge. So you must have an understanding of each parameter of the ME. So then if you have a good understanding of the parameters, functionalities, then you can start building your cartridges. So yeah, to start the steps, this is the step. First step is select your cartridge type. So in ASAP Design Studio, we have two types of cartridges. One is a service cartridge, another one is a network cartridge. So, so when we choose service, when we choose network cartridge, so yeah, so network cartridge. So when you want to create specific, when you want to create the cartridge specific to the vendor and technology, then you go for the network cartridge. When you want to group different vendors and technologies, then you go for the service cartridge. Yeah. So next, define your any details. Let's say we have to identify, we have to define what is the protocol, what is the communication protocol between the SAP and network, whether it is communication protocol, connection protocol, like whether you are using HTTP connection, whether you are going with TCP, whether you are going SSH, whether you are telnet, there are multiple, there are various protocols you have to identify. Then maximum number of connections that any supports. How many concrete connections can any to give us? So next point is define the corresponding connection handle for your end. So you have to define one dedicated connection handle to your end. So once you define, you have to implement. You have to create one Java class. The methods to execute any connection details. So once you completed the connection handler and corresponding Java class, so we have to start identifying the other API calls. Identify the API calls and parameters that you can request. Let's say you have a multiple APIs to an one is a create a subscriber, suspend subscriber, terminate subscriber, modify subscriber. It's like you have to identify all the API calls and parameters. So next, map user defined exit type to a basic step. Let's see, we have to map exit types. When you have a so user defined exit types is nothing but the user errors. Let's say if the any returns response is some error, so uh, we have to define based upon that. If you receive this kind of error message, whether you have to complete the order, whether you have to retry the order, whether you have to fail the order, we have to configure. Next, create a corresponding atomic actions for API calls. So for each API, you have to create an atomic action. Atomic action will be create, each atomic action is like each command executed on any. Specify the parameters used for API calls. So once you define an atomic action, we have to specify the parameters for each API, like create subscriber, modify subscriber. So each API we have to define the parameters. So once you create an atomic actions, then define the action processor and associated Java execute methods. So next, configure Java execute method to handle the API response messages. So will be user errors will be handled API response messages using the user defined exit types. So once you define the action processor, we have to associate the action processor to the corresponding atomic actions. So we have to map all the atomic actions corresponding to the action processor. We have to map it. So finally, we'll be creating the service action and associate it. One or more atomic actions as per the requirement. So then create the sample orders, apply the cartridge, test the cartridge. Yeah. So these are all the workflows, all the sequence of steps involved to create, build the cartridge. So now let's create, let's execute the step by step in a design studio. Yeah. So here it is our design studio, and we are using the version. Yeah, we are using the version 7.4.1, which is the latest version of our design studio. So yeah, first start with the first step. Select your cartridge type. So then I'll create new studio project. So we'll be creating the activation project. Here I'll name it as MSN broadband. Yeah, here is the cartridge type. Either you want to create a service cartridge or network cartridge. So I'll go with the network cartridge vendor specific. So I'll give package com. So vendor have to MSN. So I'm giving like one demo values. So I'm giving all the demo values. So vendor MSN, technology HLR, software load 1.0. So next, yes. Now click on finish. So start creating the cartridge. Yeah, it has created the cartridge, and in cartridge we have a data dictionary, the documentation, and this is our cartridge. Yeah, so we'll start with the next point. Define your NE details. Yeah, creating our network element. So see here if you observe here the name NSNHLR. So the design studio enforces the naming convention. So if you want we can change, but it enforces, it asks us to use this naming convention. So I'm using this convention. Finish. Yeah. So it has created the NE. So we have to specify the details. Yeah. So what is the protocol we are planning to use? So I'm going with the telnet SSH protocol. So connection pool. Now we have to give the pool that I'll use NSN pool, and here is maximum connections. I'll just view how many concurrent connections can 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 have. If I will given 2, and these are the sub configuration parameters. Yeah, connections. So connections here we have gone 2 maximum connections. So we have to create the 2 connections. Yeah. So uh, we need a parameters, like we have to pass like user IDs, password, right? So the design studio like provides a few global parameters, and taking those parameters, the different parameters for each protocol. So here are the predefined parameters for each protocol. So first I'll create one more connection. I'll name my connection MFN connection. Second MFN connection to this is fine. So here, so whether you want to use the development or production. So I'm using, if you want a development, if you want production, we can use production. So see all the communication parameters as we even added the default parameters. So target, here we have to map remote host to the local host. So I'll give name as my map remote host to the host CLI. So that's all. We have to give the values like host user ID and the host password and the same circuit client one host IP address and using local host. Time it one I've passed some dummy values. I mean, like if you see this these parameters not very, you can delete the parameters. We can keep what are the parameters which are required. Yeah, we have to save the file. Yeah, save. Yeah. So yeah, that's all. We have defined our network element. Now we'll be moving to the next. Define the corresponding connection handler. Have to define our connection handler. So any connection handler. So name MFN connection. You can give the name any name you want. Just for naming the so created NSN connection. Now implement one or more Java class methods. So we have to create the Java class. Here we have to add. So here is the class. We have to new class. Here it will give the packages, and here the connection type is telnet, and package if you want to update the package, change the package, and the class name also I will give NSN connection handler. And yeah, package name connection handler telnet. Yes, finish. Yeah, it is creating. Yeah, so yeah, it has generated auto generated code. So yeah, this is the code. So we have to update, you have to add this login method, right? So we have to implement this code as per our requirement, our as per our connection details. So this class has to be implemented. This is so next, the next step. So identify the API calls and parameters. So we have to identify all the API calls, like create, modify, terminate all API calls and corresponding parameters. Yeah. So next is map user defined exit type to a base exit type. So you have to create the defined exit type. Here user defined. So and write a name as defined exit types. And this folder I will do NFN. Finish. So it will create an So define the exit time template. So there we have to add as per our requirement. Like I'm adding new. So let's say in the response, if I get some pattern, if I get this pattern, if in the response, if I get this kind of pattern, then do fail my order. So, what it does is if it search in the response and look, if it is this pattern, then I'm doing the exit fail. I'm making my order fail. So we have to configure like in like similar way. What we have to configure all the user errors which we will get from the network element. So we'll be configuring all like as per we have a multiple exit types like succeed, fail, retry. Let's say if you want, let's say if you sometimes any connection broken goes kind, right, so those needs to be retried. So that time, right, we'll select retry. So then order will be retried as per the specified configuration. So this is like user exit type concept. This is user exit type. Next, so create a corresponding atomic action for each API. So I'll create atomic actions. I'll atomic action add subscriber. So this is an atomic action. Okay, finish. Yeah. So I have created atomic action. Yeah. So specify the parameter used for. So we have to specify. We have to give the parameters. What are the parameters required? So here I'll add two parameters like new parameter. I'll add one parameter name. So name is added to that atomic action, and I'll add one more parameter. I'll add ID. Finish. So these two parameters I have added. There's a second parameter I have added as structured data elements. So these are two different parameters. Yeah. So two parameters I have added. Next, what is it? Then create the action processor and associated job. So we have to create an action processor corresponding to this action processor. So like the add subscriber we are creating add subscriber. So finish. Yeah, we are creating the Java class for the corresponding action. So I'll add subscriber. Yeah. So you want the package, then you can update the package. Add subscriber and finish. So it is generating code. We have to implement as per our requirement. get the code. So next, so configure Java executed method to handle. So we have to configure these exit types. We have to implement. So this exit type, like where we get the responses, like what of the response. If the match is right, then based upon the success or fail, as we created in the user exit types. So associate action processor corresponding to atomic actions. So we have to map it. So here we have created action processor corresponding atomic action. So we have to map the atomic action. So here we'll be mapping. We click on add and it will pop up here, and we'll be adding the atomic action. Yeah. So save. So this action process is mapped with the atomic action. Next, create a service action. So now I'll create service action. Service action name. Yeah, I'll give it as add subscriber NSN. Here I have created service action. So these I have to map atomic action to the service action. So I map my earlier created atomic action to this service action. Yeah, we have mapped all the atomic action to the corresponding service action. Now I'll build, clean it and build it. Yeah. So we have finished steps like create a sample orders and deploy the cartridge, test the cartridge. So we'll have to deploy the cartridge. To deploy the cartridge, we have to create. So from Design Studio, we can deploy the cartridge. So for that, we have to open to connect. We have to connect to the environment. To connect to environment, we have to use the Studio environment. Yeah. So have to create one project, some SIT. I'll create SIT environment. So project is SIT and dev environment, dev one environment. So just yeah. So it has created the environment. So we have to give the environment details. I have to provide it. So once you provide the environment details, here the whatever the cartridge right we have created here, so we have to deploy. So just if you click on deploy, then it will ask username and password for the environment. Once you provide, then you click on OK, then it will go and deploy the cartridge into the environment. That's all. So this is how we'll deploy the cartridge. So deploy the cartridge. We can deploy. So next our final topic is importing existing SAR files into Design Studio. So we can import an existing SAR files into Design Studio. So here is the process. Here you have to go to Design Studio Prospect, Studio Design. Yeah. So here right click on and see here we will have an import option. So we can either import the project or we can use import the SAR file. I have one SAR file. Okay, I forgot to show one thing. So once your project is created, cartridge is created, Design Studio automatically build and create SAR file. So that will be in the location. Yeah. Yeah, and now I have built the project automatically enabled. So now if I go to this location, send broadband, yeah, it creates a SAR files here in this location. Yeah, now we will see, we'll try to import activation archive, or either you can import the normal project also. I'll try to import the archive. I have one SAR file here. I'll import that SAR file. So yeah, it's activation network provide finish. So it will input into our design studio. Yeah, it's all it's imported. It is imported. Yeah, here it is importing. So yeah, yes, import is completed. Now you see the project is imported. Now we can see all the code like activation processor, action processor, atomic actions, service actions, all these things. And we can update. So here the service action. Yeah. So here is the parameters and mapping here it action processor. Yeah. So this is how we will be importing existing SAR file into our design studio. Yeah. So we have covered all the topics. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.